Have you ever woken up one morning and felt an almost imperceptible shift inside you? A strange, alien quietness? The kind that makes you realize you don't need the coffee, the phone, the approval, the plans for the day, or even the day itself to go as you imagined. It's not depression. It's not apathy. It's something more unsettling. A clarity, sharp as cold air at dawn. If everything you cling to were taken away, you would still be here, and perhaps you'd be more yourself than ever. It sounds liberating, doesn't it? But as soon as that thought lands, another follows like a shadow. If you need nothing, what place is left for you in a world built entirely on need? You've been told since you could walk that life is about striving toward love, wealth, recognition, comfort, the next goal, the next version of better. Without desire, how do you move? Without attachment, what keeps you tethered? Without fear of losing, what keeps you obedient? Imagine walking through a crowded city street, the noise of commerce and conversation humming around you, but feeling like an outsider, not because you are excluded, but because you are no longer bargaining with the world. You don't want what they want. You don't fear what they fear. The billboards don't call to you. The promises of more or better feel like a foreign language. And yet, this is where the paradox begins. That very freedom from need makes you the most dangerous person in that crowd. Dangerous not because you intend harm, but because you reveal, without speaking a word, that the scaffolding holding up the whole structure of society is optional. Carl Jung once observed, "The man who has a why to live can bear almost any how." But what of the man who no longer searches for his why in the places society tells him to? What if you are no longer chasing the carrot or fearing the stick? To a system built on the endless loop of craving and fear, you are unpredictable, uncontrollable, an anomaly in the algorithm. You may feel this possibility tugging at you already. Perhaps you've noticed moments when the urgency to impress fades, or the anxiety to keep pace with others simply dissolves. You see the game, the unwritten rules, the invisible strings that pull people's minds and moods. And for a fleeting second, you wonder what would happen if you simply stopped playing. Would the world collapse around you? Would you drift into irrelevance? A ghost walking among the living? Or would you find a strength so unshakable that it frightens even you? The truth is, you've been trained quietly, subtly, relentlessly, to believe that needing nothing is the same as having nothing. That without desire, you are hollow. That without fear, you are lost. This is the lie you've inherited, and like all powerful lies, it hides in plain sight. And so, the great question begins to form in your mind, not as a philosophical exercise, but as a challenge to the very rhythm of your existence. If you could free yourself from every need, every attachment, every external source of meaning, who would you become? It is a question you cannot easily unask. Once it stirs in you, it will return again and again, like a dream you can't quite remember, but can't shake off either. It will haunt you in boardrooms, in quiet kitchens, in the middle of the night when the hum of the refrigerator feels like the only sound in the universe. And if you follow it, if you dare to look past the comforts and distractions, it will lead you somewhere dangerous. Not dangerous to your life, but to everything you've been told your life must be. Because beneath this question lies a deeper truth, one that stretches far beyond your personal freedom and into the architecture of the entire human world. And this is where we must go next, into the hidden root of the problem, where psychology, philosophy, and the machinery of society meet. The world does not fear the man who desires. It knows how to feed him, how to give just enough to keep him hungry. But the man who needs nothing, he cannot be bought, bribed, or coerced. And that is why every mechanism around you, psychological, social, economic, works tirelessly to make you need. You were born into a system of subtle hypnosis. From your first breath, symbols of safety and danger were drawn for you. A smile meant approval. A frown meant you had strayed. These early cues planted the seeds of craving, for warmth, for recognition, for belonging. Later, they became the more sophisticated currencies of adulthood: status, possessions, experiences. Carl Jung saw this with unsettling clarity. The greatest threat to liberty is not the state, but the loss of the individual's inner autonomy. It's not chains on your wrists that keep you in place. It's the invisible chains in your mind, forged from expectation, fear, and the stories you've accepted about yourself. Consider this. You've been taught to equate having with being. You measure your worth by accumulation degrees, money, likes, titles, not because you truly believe they complete you, but because the absence of them feels like death in the eyes of others. You are not chasing joy. You are fleeing shame. Nietzsche warned of this when he spoke of the herd. The herd fears the one who walks away, not because he harms them, but because his very existence calls their values into question. If one person can live without the currency they've been taught to worship, then the entire exchange rate of their lives becomes suspect. And suspicion is dangerous. It can spread. Yet this is not only a philosophical abstraction. Modern psychology shows us that human identity is constructed in relationship to others. Social comparison theory tells us that you don't even know who you are until you measure yourself against the group. Remove the group's yardstick, and you enter existential freefall. This is why society works so hard to give you roles: student, worker, consumer, partner, citizen. These roles come with scripts: what to value, what to fear, what to chase. And when you perform them well, you are rewarded with belonging. When you question them, you are subtly exiled, not always physically, but emotionally, economically, reputationally. Aldous Huxley described this as the comfortable prison of modern life, one in which the inmates are kept docile, not by force, but by pleasure. Comfort becomes the leash, entertainment the cage. You might not even notice the walls until you try to step beyond them. And here is the most insidious part. The cage is built inside your own mind. The dopamine systems of your brain, evolutionarily wired to reward survival behaviors, are hijacked by the smallest of lures: a red notification, a new purchase, a nod of approval from someone whose opinion you barely value. You are conditioned to chase microbursts of validation, the way a lab rat presses a lever for sugar water. Schopenhauer put it brutally: we are like a man running downhill who cannot stop. He must keep running, though the precipice is at hand. The need is self-perpetuating. You seek to fill it, yet the filling only deepens the hunger. And this, perhaps, is the truest function of need. It sustains the machinery of civilization, even at the expense of the individual soul. But there is a deeper, more ancient reason why letting go of need feels like a kind of death. Needs have been our compass since the beginning of time. They orient us toward food, shelter, tribe. Strip them away, and your nervous system panics. The mind whispers, without this, you are nothing. Without this, you will vanish. And so, the idea of needing nothing, of becoming untethered from these internal compulsions, feels almost unnatural. Which is why, when you glimpse it, even for a moment, it can be exhilarating and terrifying at once. But if you dare to examine this conditioning, you will see it for what it is. Not an absolute truth, but a story one passed down through generations, enforced by culture, and reinforced by your own fear of the void. You stand now at the edge of a realization that can't easily be unlearned. Your needs are not all truly yours. Many are implanted, smuggled into your psyche by parents, peers, media, and market forces until you believe them to be essential. And once you see this, you can no longer pretend you are merely a product of human nature. You begin to suspect something far more unsettling, that the architecture of your inner life is, in part, a construction carefully assembled to keep you dependent, obedient, and predictable. But what happens if you start pulling at those beams? What if you strip away the scaffolding, piece by piece, until only the bare structure of your being remains. You may think the danger lies in being without need, but the real danger is in realizing how much of your life has been lived for someone else's benefit and what you might do once you're free from it. Which brings us to the question you've been circling without fully naming. If need is the glue holding society and your own identity together, what happens when it dissolves? The answer lies in the shadows of your daily life, quietly shaping everything you see and touch. And it is there, in those shadows, that we must now look to uncover the unseen consequences. You walk through your day thinking you are making choices: what to eat, what to buy, what to post, what to dream about. But the deeper you look, the more you see the same invisible architecture beneath every decision. Needs, both real and fabricated, form the skeleton of your existence. You believe you are shaping your life, yet much of it is simply the unconscious execution of a program written long before you could read its code. This is where the real danger lies, not in the obvious chains, but in the velvet ones. You can see through overt control. You can resist an open threat. But the system you inhabit doesn't rule by force. It rules by weaving itself into your sense of self. You don't obey because you're afraid. You obey because you believe you're doing what you want. Cognitive science calls this confabulation, the mind's tendency to create convincing explanations for actions whose real causes are hidden. You tell yourself you're buying that brand because you like the taste, taking that job because it's practical, chasing that relationship because it feels right. But in truth, countless invisible hands, cultural norms, marketing algorithms, childhood conditioning are nudging you toward these choices. If you could strip away those influences, what would remain? Would you still want the same life? Or would you realize you've been living inside a narrative someone else authored? Carl Jung warned, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you'll call it fate. This is not just a personal insight, it's a social law. The more unconscious your needs remain, the more predictable you are. And the more predictable you are, the easier it is to keep you locked inside the loop. Consider the economic machine. It doesn't merely respond to your needs, it manufactures them. Entire industries exist to make you feel incomplete, then sell you the illusion of completion. Fashion shifts seasonally, not because clothes wear out, but because desire must be kept restless. Technology updates not because the old version fails, but because satisfaction is a dangerous state. It slows consumption. And it's not just products. Politics thrives on cultivated need. Leaders frame themselves as providers of safety, order, or belonging, implying, subtly or bluntly, that without their protection, you are vulnerable. Fear becomes the currency of loyalty. Even relationships are not immune. You've been taught to need certain emotional signals, constant validation, proof of affection, a partner who mirrors the image you have of yourself. These needs can tether you to people who diminish you, simply because you're afraid to face the void without them. This is the quiet catastrophe. The very structure of society depends on the proliferation of needs that keep you running in circles. And when you step off that track, even slightly, you become a disruption. Your mere existence without those needs undermines the legitimacy of the game. That is why those who truly need nothing, whether monks, rebels, or visionaries, are often met with suspicion or hostility. They are living proof that the framework is optional. And if it's optional, it's fragile. You might think the consequences of this system are only personal missed opportunities, unfulfilled dreams, but they ripple outward into the fabric of civilization. A society of people driven by artificial needs will always be unstable because it can never rest. It must consume endlessly, compete endlessly, fear endlessly. Peace in such a system is not profitable. The urgency to escape this trap is not philosophical indulgence, it's survival. Because while you remain in it, your choices are never entirely your own. And when choices are not your own, neither is your life. Yet here is the paradox that keeps most from breaking free. The system has taught you to see your needs as your identity. To let them go feels like erasing yourself. You fear that without them, you would drift into nothingness, an empty vessel in a vast, indifferent world. But perhaps that fear is the final lock on the cage. Perhaps what waits beyond it is not emptiness, but clarity, a clarity so radical that it redefines what it means to live. The moment you begin to sense this possibility, you also sense its danger. To follow it means dismantling not only your personal illusions, but the illusions of those around you. You risk becoming a stranger in your own world. And once you take that step, there may be no way back. Which brings us to the threshold, the moment when awareness turns into rebellion. When you stop merely seeing the mechanism and start pulling at its wires. The question is no longer, why does this happen? You already know. The question now is, what will you do with this knowledge? The moment you see the mechanism, you can no longer unsee it. The billboards no longer shout. They whisper their desperation. The compliments that once fueled you now feel like currency in a game you're no longer playing. You start noticing how every conversation, every headline, every ad is designed to push you toward needing something: approval, security, status, novelty. And you feel the quiet urge to turn away. But rebellion does not begin with burning the system down. It begins with refusing to be fed by it. To break free, you must first step into a state that feels at first unbearably empty. It is the space between who you were and who you have yet to become. It is what the mystics called the desert, the place where the usual comforts cannot reach you, where the distractions that once filled your mind fall silent. Here's the paradox. In the desert, you discover how much of you was built out of noise. You begin dismantling the scaffolding, questioning each truth you inherited. Is ambition really a virtue, or is it a leash? Is comfort really happiness, or is it sedation? Is belonging really safety, or is it conformity in disguise? Carl Jung spoke of individuation, the process of becoming your true self by confronting the unconscious. This is your rebellion, to drag into the light all the implanted needs you've mistaken for your own. You don't destroy them by force. You let them wither from lack of attention. You can start small. Pause before you buy. Ask yourself if you would still want the thing if no one could see you have it. Pause before you speak. Ask if you are seeking truth or simply fishing for approval. Pause before you react. Ask if the fear you feel is really yours, or one you've been trained to carry. Every pause is an act of defiance. Every refusal to feed the machinery is a crack in its walls. History offers you examples of those who walked this path. The Stoics of ancient Rome, Epictetus, a former slave who taught that freedom is found only in mastery over desire. The ascetics of India, who renounced material possessions to explore the inner world. Diogenes, the Greek philosopher who lived in a barrel and mocked the pomp of the powerful. They were not running from life. They were running to its core. And yet, beware of the trap of romanticizing this freedom. To need nothing is not to reject the world, but to reclaim the right to engage with it on your own terms. You may still choose to own, to love, to strive, but now these are choices, not compulsions. The world will not celebrate your transformation. More likely, it will try to pull you back. Friends may call you distant. Colleagues may see you as unambitious. Your resistance to manipulation will be read as arrogance. The system will whisper, "Come back. You're safer here." This is when you must remember, your rebellion is not against people, but against the unconscious agreements that keep them bound. You do not need to convert others. You need only live in such a way that your existence itself is proof that another way is possible. There will be moments when the old cravings return, When you feel the urge to measure yourself against others, to seek validation, to chase the glittering lure, do not meet these urges with force. Meet them with awareness. Watch them rise and pass. Watch how they lose their grip when you do not feed them. Over time, you will notice a strange power emerging, not the kind that dominates others, but the kind that makes you untouchable. Without the hooks of need, threats lose their teeth. Promises lose their hold. You can walk through the marketplace of fear and desire as an observer, not a customer. And this is where the system begins to tremble. Because your freedom is contagious. The more you embody it, the more others will wonder if they too can step outside the loop. The cracks widen. The scaffolding shakes. But there is still one final step. Because to simply detach from need is not the ultimate truth. It is only the clearing of the ground. In the space left behind, something far deeper must take root. And that final revelation is the most dangerous truth of all. There comes a moment when the absence of need no longer feels like emptiness. The desert blooms. What once seemed like loss, the stripping away of desire, the death of attachment, reveals itself as space. Space so vast it frightens you at first, because nothing in it tells you who to be. And then, slowly, you understand. This is freedom. It is here that the final truth begins to take shape, not as an idea you can simply grasp, but as something you become. You realize that all your life, you have been told you are your needs, that without them, there is no you. But the truth is the opposite. The you who remains when all needs are gone. That is your real self. Carl Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Most never reach that privilege because they spend their lives being who the world requires them to be. The ultimate truth is that your worth was never dependent on fulfilling any script, not the one written by family, by culture, by fear, or by ambition. When you no longer need approval, you can finally give freely without the poison of expectation. When you no longer need possessions, you can enjoy them without being owned by them. When you no longer need certainty, you can step into the unknown with the curiosity of a child instead of the dread of a prisoner. You stop living life as a transaction and begin living it as an expression. You do not work to earn your right to exist. You do not love to fill a hole in yourself. You do not create to prove your value. You live, love, and create because these are the natural movements of a free being. This is the most subversive act of all, not withdrawal from the world, but participation without chains. The system cannot function on you because it cannot extract what you no longer give unconsciously. You become, in a quiet way, invincible. Nietzsche hinted at this when he spoke of the Bermensch, not as a tyrant above others, but as one who has created his own values from the ground up, who stands rooted in himself, even if the whole world turns away. You understand now that power does not come from controlling others, but from no longer being controlled. And yet, this realization is not an ending. It is a threshold, because to live without need is not to float above life untouched. It is to dive into it fully, knowing you can surface any time. The ocean of existence no longer threatens to drown you because you are no longer clinging to the shore. This is why the man who needs nothing is society's greatest threat, not because he seeks to destroy it, but because his very being offers proof that a human can live without the chains the world insists are necessary. He shows that security, identity, and meaning are not gifts the system grants, but things that have been inside you all along. And once you see that truth, you cannot be returned to the old blindness. You can pretend for a while to play the game again, but deep down you will always know the board is imaginary. Perhaps the greatest irony is that the ultimate truth does not end in a grand answer, but in a deeper question. Once you are free from needing, what will you choose? With no hunger to drive you, no fear to bind you, The compass of your life is no longer set by survival or expectation. It is set by the quiet pull of what feels true. This is not the conclusion of your journey. It is the place where your real life begins. So here you stand, looking out at a horizon without walls, without maps, without guarantees. Behind you, the machinery hums on, trying to catch the attention of the one who has already walked away. Ahead of you, there is only possibility. And maybe that is the final, most dangerous truth of all. That freedom is not something given, nor something taken. It is something you realize. And once you do, no one and nothing can take it from you. The question is no longer, why do you need nothing? The question is, now that you are free, what will you do with it?